Matt, thank you so much for agreeing to allow me to interview you today. I think a lot of people are sometimes stuck in their own way and think that they're not able to change.
Sure.
And I've been coaching for a long time, and the changes that I've seen in you over the past 3 months are probably as transformational and as significant as anyone I've coached in my life. And so I thought it was really important to capture some of these changes and the essence of what's happened with you. So you can not only inspire other people to make changes, but you can share a little bit about what you've done. So
Absolutely.
thanks so much for agreeing to talk to me. And
My pleasure.
I think the first thing I want is if you can introduce yourself, just your role and anything you want to share about yourself, just so listeners know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Livingston. I am an account executive at Salesforce. I've been there a little over a year, about a year and 3 months. Been in the program since April, end of April, start of May program, and it's been amazing. So looking forward to getting a chance to talk more about it.
Cool. So why don't we start, just for everyone listening, Matt's a member of the Gold coaching program. So he goes to the group calls, and also we have one-on-one calls together. But why don't you start by sharing a little bit about, first off, why you joined the program in the first place? That's a good place to start.
Yeah. So I started with Salesforce, and when I interviewed with Salesforce, for me, it was almost, I think I had kind of a thought that once I got in, if I got into the Salesforce, then that was the hard part, was getting in. And I was way off. But it was just like any tech company. It's not unique to Salesforce. There's always somebody that is doing really well, whether they're the top performer, whatever, or just a top performer. And so I wanted to, I wanted to find out what was that top performer doing. And in Salesforce, it's very hard to get people's time. So, when I came across your program, there was a couple of really big bullet points that hit home for me. Number one was the focus on the process. I read before signing up, I read about your story, how you've committed to various habits and processes. I believe very strongly in that myself. So there was immediate alignment between the way we think. And then when I got a chance to meet you, I saw that you were very passionate about helping people. There was a sincerity that a lot of coaches and different in this type of role don't really have. So I think that was very very apparent from the first call that we had. For me at least. And also after the first call we had, I was like, okay, from where I am right now, I'm 99% sure this is the guy that's going to help me get unstuck. So I signed up. I knew I was making a good investment. At the very least, I was going to get my money back in commission, which has happened. But that was really those main points. I really like the process driven.
So from I guess not even from an outcome driven, but more specifically, you talk about what you wanted to change, and you said you were stuck. Can you describe to me what that looked like, or what do you mean by I was stuck? Tell me the old Matt and kind of who you were before we started working together.
Yeah, I was, I think you said it best one time. It was almost like there were times where I was like a lamb. Where I really wasn't sure what to do. I wanted somebody to come over and put their arm around me and say, here's exactly what you do and everything's going to be okay. And so stuck to me was really, was for the most part, it was a lack of confidence, number one. It was very much a lack of a good repeatable process. And really, I didn't have much in the way of habits. So I was stuck. I like exercising. I like being with my kids, and I like being with my wife, but I never had any structure. I've always just kind of figured out a way each day to spend, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, but it's just always like every morning I'm going, okay, this is a fire drill. We're going to figure everything out. And that to me was the biggest part of being stuck. I didn't want this sort of rat race constantly. It felt harder than it needed to be. And I was a little bit depressed. I 100% attached my identity to my number. How close was I to my quota? If I was the farther away I got, the more I felt connected to my job. So it was this weird cycle that I got into, which was very hard to I thought would be very hard to break. But stuck was literally stuck. It was, by definition for me, it was, how do I get out of this feeling? Because I hate the way I'm feeling right now. With as being a recovering addict, I know what the rock bottom feels like, and in this case, it was kind of a blessing. I had reached the pinnacle, reached the company that I always wanted to be at. It was like, wow, hey everybody, I have a job at Salesforce. And then it was, 4 or 5 months in, and I went, oh my gosh, this is not only challenging, it's fast paced. This is something I have to level up. I've got to figure out a way to get better. I've got to surround myself with the right people. I've got to, get in touch. So that was the unstuck part. But being down in that place, I remember probably a week before the first time you and I met, there was very little going right. My numbers, my pipeline was low. My relationships with my family, my wife, was good but not great. Everything could be a little better, and my standards were low. So I didn't really have it was like I was kind of okay with it because I had gotten so used to being in my own head. So I had really low standards, and if
for context, when you say my standards were low, what does that mean as far as your performance, as far as your health, as far as your personal life? What is low standards?
Yeah. But if in each one of those sort of swim lanes sort of has its own, for work, it's how close am I to quota? My standard was, okay, at first, I'm going to hit 120% of quota. I started out and then it was, maybe 70 or 80% my first year. It's kind of like, it's okay if I do this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not great. So, and then for personal, my standards were, okay, I got some time with my kids this weekend or that, and for my wife, it was like, well, essentially my standards, the short answer is they were kind of like the bare minimum to get by. And making that shift was really the first step, I think.
Okay. So what I hear is low standards is you were super comfortable and you weren't pushing yourself, and you weren't,
not even a little.
And why was that? Why did you have those low standards? What do you think that was a result of?
I'd say it was very cyclical. I would start out with best intentions, day to day, but without any sort of any habitual things going on, any routines, any proven, I would do things and then I wouldn't get results. So I would try something else and I would try. So it just kind of slowly, I felt like I slowly had to lower my standards to feel okay with myself.
Yeah. So it was a lack of, I don't know if it was a lack of discipline that you're saying, or a lack of knowing what to do.
Lack of knowing what to do. Yeah.
Okay.
And hearing it from people, not only yourself, but the people in our cohorts, hearing that they also are overcoming the same thing. So it was, that was also, but in terms of standards, yeah, it was that's very much kind of.
Okay. So let's talk about this. I mean, I think to date we're probably done 4 sessions together, but like I said, I've seen a dramatic shift. So why don't you share kind of was there a defining moment for you when this shift took place, when you said enough is enough, I'm sick and tired of these low standards, or what snapped? Finally snapped, because something snapped inside of you where you snapped out of it, or you snapped into it, I should say. You snapped into this place. So tell me about that moment that defined, if you can trace it back to any.
I actually can. Yeah. So the first call we had, I was, I live in Pittsburgh. The first call that you and I had, I was in New Hope, Pennsylvania with my wife and 2 kids visiting in-laws, and I was at an event for Salesforce. And at that time, I would say I could feel that my confidence was at an all-time low. So after we met and you said, okay, look, and I'm sure you remember this, or I vividly remember this. because it was so simple, but it was kind of like, this is going to require commitment. So it was, hey, just pick one thing to do for 30 minutes a day. And
I do. I remember vividly.
yeah,
It was
I said,
about,
okay,
it
I'll
was about
exercise.
getting you to freaking get off your ass and do
Yeah. And
something. Do
so
something for yourself.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll exercise for 30 minutes a day. And you asked me to say it to my wife, who happened to be in the hotel room. And I said, hey, I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes a day. She said, great, and after the first week, the next morning I went on a run, and then for the next week, every day I had it somewhere in my schedule, and I did it at the very least 30 minutes. That was the baseline. Some days, I felt motivated, and some days 30 minutes was, I just got to get through this Peloton ride or this walk or whatever it is. And I would say about a week in, I realized I started to feel different, because I had done that sort of thing that I looked back and I went, oh, I've been doing this for a week. Great. And I started to feel like, okay, maybe my thinking or my routine, my habits, my daily things that I do I need to figure out how to do this better. Stop focusing on how much. The end result was always my focus for so long, especially in the past, couple of years. So I remember after I got home and it had been a week, and just during that week, there had been several things that went on, good and bad, some sort of drama around the family, but I still did that 30 minutes of exercise no matter what. I did it one night at like 10:30 at night with everybody asleep in my house, just because I'm like, shit, it's not,
So you're committed.
Yeah, when you say it out loud to you say it out loud to your partner. And I was like, I kind of have to, like, if I'm going to invest in this program and get out of it, I'm going to do the work. So that I would say probably a week. I think it was roughly a week in, I started to really feel a difference, and that's when it kind of started that upward trend.
Okay, so you started with exercising,
Yeah.
and I can relate. I'm training for a marathon right now.
Yeah.
I've shared. And I was in Yosemite and Sequoia National Park for a week, and the training doesn't take a break. I'm on a specific training schedule, but one of the runs was 16 miles, which is the longest I've ever done in my life. And I just could not do it in Sequoia. I said, you know what, I can make a choice. I can do it here and do it all uphill in 95-degree heat, or I can do it when I get back Sunday night into LA. And so I waited till Sunday night. It was about 7. We had unpacked, 5-hour journey. I'm like, I got to run my 16 miles. And it was the hardest run of my life. I mean, my legs felt like lead, but during that time, I'm like, I'm committed. I'm doing the training plan. And it wasn't my best run by any means, but mentally it was my best run, because it like forced me to keep going. I had worse pain in my legs and my groins and my knees. I'd been sitting in the car for 6 hours and hadn't been in the same training regimen. But the act of showing up and doing it is truly, something that inspires confidence. And it sounds like that's where kind of you got some confidence, was keeping your commitment to yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was I think for me, a lot of my life was kind of like, I'm 99 or I'm 90% there, and that's okay, and which was okay when you're 8 years old, but when you've got a family to feed, you have to go the distance, and when you want it bad enough, it's you'll find a way to do it. But I think it was this simple thing, and I remember thinking, okay, I like this idea, these building blocks. And for me, it was exercise. For somebody else, it's probably writing, now I write more. I write every day. And so it wasn't like I just started with that, but it wasn't like I just do that. I started with that. And yeah, that was for me, just the commitment to do that.
I love the idea of building blocks.
Yeah.
I love that idea, because once you do it and you incorporate a habit, then you can take on new building blocks. In your case, writing. But talk to me about what was next. So you started the first 30 days, you did that commitment.
Yeah.
What else? You mentioned writing. What else did you take on? Like, what are you doing now? 3 months later, what does your life look like that you weren't doing before? And kind of what evolved after that initial 30-day running challenge or exercise challenge.
Yeah, well, it didn't stop at 30 days. I kept going. I think around day 45 or so, I went to, I went somewhere and I was like, you know what? I'm a little worn out. I'll take a day off, but it's now a five day a week minimum
Mhm.
habit. And it's not even, when I go exercise, it's, for me, I look forward to it now, very much look forward to it. So the other things, basically what I'm doing is also I'm being very deliberate. And I think that one of there are some impactful exercises that are very simple that you have done for me and with me. And so the answer to this is really valuing my time. How much am I valuing my time? Because, it rained, so I would, the guy couldn't come cut my grass on Friday, so I could have done it. Instead, I paid him a little extra to come on the weekend. So I don't, because I want to spend that time with my kids. So I think that was really big. I never thought of it I always valued my time, but I never really said, okay, you know what, where do I need to spend it? So that was a big thing, was time management, getting time with with people that matter to me, that are going to support me, surrounding myself with those types of people, and connecting. I would say now I spend time, deliberate, no screen time with both my kids, sometimes individually, sometimes together. And then as soon as they're down, I go to my wife and I want to take care of, I want to, hey, lay down, what do you need? What do you want to watch? Like, it feels good. It's this thing. And my wife also has said, like, geez, why? You feel good, and then you want to make others kind of feel inspired a little bit. But it's a daily simple, and I have, I have this thing I'm looking at now. It's a habit roadmap. I've done these things are so simple, from a work perspective, 2 hours of prospecting, 4 days a week minimum. That's the table stakes. And that has paid off dividends, in dividends.
And you weren't doing that before?
I would not deliberately. Some days I would say, okay, I'm going to send out 10 follow-up emails and put together. I would just kind of like haphazardly put my day together. But the things that you asked me to do were not rocket science. They were just so they are, and going through the workbook and all, it's things that are just easily repeatable once you get them into your schedule. So it's sort of like, for me, it was really a shift in everything. I always thought sales was just this, get up and go. If you're not working 12 hours a day, you're not going to break through, half a minute, whatever your goal is. But it's not, that's just not the case. But for 15 years, I've assumed it was. And that, for me, I feel like has been kind of the biggest thing is now I know how much my time's worth. I actually am confident in saying, hey, my time's worth, I think we figured out it's like 270 or 225 or $40 an hour, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when you put it that way, it's kind of like, yeah, I absolutely would spend that money to spend that time with my kids instead of doing something else, and I think that for me, that's the big shift is, and I'm internally happier. Like, it's not, there's, my wife is she makes me happy, but I make myself happy now, which is a big thing, for me.
Yeah. So I'm bucketing your progress in 3 buckets specifically. And one is self-care, which is your exercise, your writing, your rest. The other I'm going to call family, which is quality time with your kids, your wife, being present. And the third bucket is work.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing with you is this confidence in all of the areas, and truly, not to put words in your mouth, but you're showing up as you consistently in all areas of life. And I call that work-life integration. Can you kind of elaborate on this authenticity that you're bringing to all places in your life?
And it's kind of, and it goes back to, I like, at this, yes, absolutely. So I think the best way to put it is what we've talked about a few times, which is getting to a point where, and we've called it not giving an F, but you know, it's more of a confidence, because you know, if something doesn't go your way, you've got everything handled. So the work-life integration piece, for me, is I know that, you know, those three buckets are the priorities. So, you know, obviously I've got to work. Obviously I've got, I'm not going to like it. I like spending time with my family more than work, but so how can I make all these things sort of blend together harmoniously, I guess, and really that's the sort of, for me, has been the Everest. How do you get these things and also be a performer? So, you know, it really does take a shift in thinking. I mean, you have to think differently. And you have to get somebody in front of you that has done this before, or in my case, this, because there isn't a simple roadmap to, okay, I'm going to work 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then I'm going to spend 10 minutes with my kids before they go to bed, and then I'm going to fall asleep and not talk to my wife. That's a recipe for disaster at some point. That's when the buckets start to get sort of
recipe for divorce is what it is.
Divorce, yeah, exactly. And that's when I feel like, those buckets would start to get very uneven. If work is all of a sudden filling up, then there's only so much. There's only 24 hours, so there's only so many hours can go in each bucket. But I also communicate a lot better. So like, I think the big thing is, if I'm going to have a busy day, I will say to my wife the day before, hey, I've got a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. I may ask you to pick up the kids, or to drop them off, or both. And before, it would have been like, oh shoot, in the morning, I have to do this thing, and it's like, oh, why wouldn't you tell me that yesterday? So I'm sort of a better proactive husband, since starting the program, because it's like, hey, I've got my day organized tomorrow. It's pretty busy. I need your help. No problem. Okay, cool. It's this level of communication that I have with my wife now, and listening ability. Because it's just, it's been, it's what I had to do. I feel like, a lot of the stuff here, you have to do it, or you're not really trying. But yeah, I think the biggest thing there is really kind of balancing those three major categories, because that's, and again, find somebody, like for me, it was find you and a community that's really trying to do the same thing and going through challenges. And, that to me is huge.
Yeah, you're a model student, and I really didn't do very much, honestly. I want to give you all the credit, because you're taking action on these simple things that frankly do require work. So if we could summarize in kind of in the key areas, what changes you've made in those three buckets. So you said exercising, daily journaling. Let's focus on just the self-care bucket first. So exercise 5 days a week, some type of cardio. Journaling. What are you journaling about? How often?
So actually, since I started the program as well, I actually do a couple types of writing. So yeah, exercise for me is important, and the self-care bucket to me is actually the most important of the three. You can't show up to my wife or kids or to work, if I feel like shit, and I've all I've eaten is cheeseburgers and haven't gotten off the couch in a week. It's just,
so I agree 100%.
For me, that's my version of self-care, is taking care of my body and mind. And so yeah, I journal, I meditate, things I've never done habitually before. I do yoga, all these things. And then
is it a daily journaling? Is it a daily meditation?
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah. So
a morning routine. Tell me kind of when this happens. What's the?
So yeah, absolutely. So yes, it is a morning routine. For the past, up until this week, I had COVID. So for the time I was still had COVID. I'm like, I want to keep these habits. I'm laying down doing nothing anyway. Might as well. But really, the journaling was anything that was on my mind that was bothering me. But there was a big but there. But if somebody picked it up and read it, they would know what I was talking about. So I wanted to, and really the short answer is clarity. I wanted just to write, even if it was 2 sentences. And anyway, the what I was trying to write was, okay, before this, there was typically something on my mind that was bothering me. And I'll give you an example. We were going to go on vacation, and then who got my wife, or somebody got sick in my wife's family, and we talked about not going, and then we were, it was like, oh, do we want to spend the money? It was like all these things, all these reasons that we were trying to come up with, for not going on vacation. And it kind of turned into sort of this and what we ended up doing, and I'll give you, is sort of on a whim. We ended up going on vacation. So the journaling for me is mostly about how is it that that I'm going to feel good before I go to bed. So it's as simple as that. And so like I've got an example here. It was, hey, and I usually write it, and I write it to myself. I don't write it like as in this happened today. I write it like, hey dummy, type thing. So I've got, for example, I wrote, hey, don't forget, you've got to reach out to your friend Brad. You haven't talked to him in a couple months. You wanted to play golf with him this weekend. Do that tomorrow. It'll make you feel better. He's a good friend. You haven't, like, I wrote all these reasons I was going to call him tomorrow. And it was like, I was like, hey, and also don't forget to ask him about his, his fiance, and like all this stuff, and his new girlfriend, and just like, and I went, oh, and then I woke up the next day and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I gotta, so I ended up shooting him a text and all these things, how you doing? How's how's your new girlfriend? How's all this stuff? By the way, do you want to play golf this weekend? It's like, I got a text back twice as long. Hey, it's great to hear from you. So, and it was like, oh wow, it was, and those things act as positive reinforcement for what I did the night before. So like, I was like, oh gosh, okay, something. And I went into this with a little bit of blind faith, because I'm like, you know what, process is really always worked. So I started writing those types of things every night. So, and I'll give you another kind of goofy example real quick here. A couple nights ago, I went and played golf Saturday. Had a great time, met some new people, and come the evening time, I'm like, oh wow, I'm exhausted. And I was like especially exhausted because it was hot. I was walking around the whole golf course looking for other people's golf balls. And so I wrote, I am absolutely exhausted, but it feels amazing. I got to meet some great, and I wrote all these positive things down, and I'm like, I put it down, and it was, again, this is 4 sentences, maybe 5 sentences. And then it sort of stirred my mood, and even more positive. It was just kind of like a feeling of constant momentum, is kind of what it's been. And I think it continuously feels that way.
Yeah, it's like a positive journal. It sounds like.
Yeah, and it's yeah, it's not, and sometimes it looks like it's just like a to-do list, or like but it always has a reason for doing something, like, but that's just kind of like, because I wanted to write more.
Yeah, it's like, it reminds me of like Matthew McConaughey's like Notes to Self. He wrote that book, like the green, I haven't read it, but it's a bestseller, and he just wrote this book. It's like memoirs to himself over the years.
Yeah, I mean, mine would definitely not make sense to most people, but you would be like, oh, okay, he's writing a note to his friend, or his, so and that, it just makes you feel really, puts you in a really positive state of mind. And I feel like, a lot of times in a tough day, that's the battle there, is what's your mind, what's the state. We talk about state all the time. You're, I think that's, one of your core principles is, what's your state, right now, how do we get you,
what I say is motion
creates emotion. Yeah.
Motion creates emotion.
Yeah. So that's, I think just having learned more about I wanted to
So
do.
true. It is so true. And it's like
Yeah. And
even a little walk, a little stretch, a little stand up at your desk or whatever can change everything.
the littlest things
Mhm.
can make it just these mounds of difference.
So you're feeling better about yourself because you're on your commitment, you're getting in writing, it's reinforcing, you're meditating. How is this translating now to like how you say it starts with you and you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So you're filling your cup so you can flow to others. Now let's talk about the family. What habits or changes? Well, let's start with how were you before with your family, and then how are you now with your family? What's different?
Yeah, I would say I was equally as sheepish with my family as I was at work at the time. And so, just being able to, my family lives nearby, and as much as I love them, when you're my age and you have kids, you have to be able to have difficult conversations about, just various things. So it just happens, it's kind of one of those things that you have to, grow up and just kind of do. Um, so, in terms of family, I had a lot more confidence to have those conversations, and I could feel it physically in my body when I'm having those conversations. I'm not hunched over and kind of like, okay, when am I going to get this conversation over with? It's a level of, hey, I know what I'm doing. I got this. Separate from that, the good side, having more time for my wife is just, kind of carving out that time for my wife. It's just sort of it's again, it's a building block, and it builds momentum. So it's the first, and it is no joke. The first 3 or 4 nights that I really could feel the difference when I was really present with my wife, she actually said, what is going on?
Mhm.
I would get up and I would say, hey, honey, is there anything I can get you? And she was like, no, I got to no, don't do the dishes. I'm going to go. It was like, I wanted to, and
Why?
like,
What happened that you wanted to help your wife
because
more,
I
be more
knew
present? Like,
and it's, it's selfish, but I knew that doing so for me was going to make me feel so good. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna remind her that I did the dishes next week when she asked me to, like, there was never that, like, because I can't remember last week.
Mhm.
It was literally, I know I'm gonna feel amazing, and I know, that's gonna, that's gonna help my wife. And then, when she gets up, she's gonna feel less stressed, and then it's
But
gonna
where did
kind
you know that from? Like, I know I tell you, oh, doing for others can help, but like fundamentally, what were you doing
of
before versus what we like? I want to know how the dynamic has shifted between your wife and, again, more importantly, like what caused you to now become a focus on being a good husband and providing and serving her, and like where did that come from? Because
yeah, well, I
not saying you were a
honestly,
bad husband before, Matt.
oh no, I
I know you
wasn't.
weren't, but maybe you were more self-absorbed and versus
Yeah,
focused on others.
I
So that's what
was.
I want to dig into a little bit more.
No, I'll admittedly say I wasn't a great one. And I honestly, sometimes I didn't want to be around myself. But I think what really truly happened there was I didn't want to be the one that I was. So in my mind, any version was better.
Mhm.
So I kind of started with sort of, and the first exercise that is in the one workbook that you have is the why. So I think I revamped my why. I don't know how many times, 8 or 9 times, because I would be in the workbook and kind of scroll back and go, hey, I want to type this in just so I remember. So doing that was kind of a catalyst. Okay, why am I? My why was very clear, but how do I get into detail? How do I make it a really compelling story? And also, like, I would much rather see my, first is really, it was my why to really connect more with my wife. We've been together for 10 years. We've had 2 kids. We've been through a bazillion moves and things together, and drama and just a lot of shit. And at the very least I can do is show up, listen, give her the emotional freedom to be around me. Like that,
Mm.
again, these are things that I didn't know a year ago. Like, I didn't learn this. This is stuff that people that are getting married in their 20s need to hear. You try harder with your spouse, and they're going to try as hard, if not harder. It's going to be this competition of who can be the better spouse. And then, just, it was really, I did not want to be the shitty husband. I did not want to be a shitty anything, but I knew I was. And I think awareness. So that a lot of what happens during these either meditation or journaling, you become very aware of how you feel and who you are. It's not, kind of inadvertently, or, sometimes maybe deliberately, but in my case, it was very inadvertent. I'm kind of like doing all these things and going, oh, wait, I definitely, there's something missing, because all of this is work related. And, I need to ask Ian about these various sales skills and all this stuff. And I was like, wait, there's nothing for, spending time with kids, wife, myself. It was none of that. So, yeah, I think that's just seeing the end result of when I changed was like, oh, this is well worth. And also I've learned you have to want it. You have to want to be happy. You have to practice happiness to an extent, and practice the habits that create your happiness, and that's literally a learning that I've come about, and it's come about in the past 6 months. Is you once you see on paper what you want and why you're doing it, it's like, oh, I'm not doing any of this. Like, I got to change something.
Mhm.
You have this very visual experience that it's like, oh, okay, this is my why, but what am I doing to even, take a step towards it? So,
Yeah. I'm glad you called that out. So your habits with your wife now, what does that look like? Is that date nights? Is that time at night with her? Is it lunches? Like, what is the action you're taking?
yeah. So,
You guys-
yeah, now that everything's kind of opened up, yeah, we a few weeks ago we had this great 3-day vacation planned. Unfortunately, a few days before we all tested positive for COVID. We in the past 3 years we haven't had a chance to do anything like that, and not just because of COVID, but also because it's a lot with kids and stuff. So, but once you start to say that's something that has to happen, like I have to do this, or the marriage that I want to be in, is going to go away, and I don't want it to. So those are sort of the decisions that you kind of have to make at the start. Is if you can't explain to somebody why you want to stay married or why you want to buy a car, rethink. It's, for me, it's like, rethink why you're even, is it just cool? But so for me, it was really, having a very clear, like, I want this, not only I don't want my marriage to just work. I want it to be amazing, but it has to start, to get to amazing, you got to start with good, and then you have to get to pretty good, so I feel, and that's, I think, getting into that mindset, which, having a community that's also moving in those directions is extremely valuable, because then you have a space where you're like, okay, I know that person is also somewhat in a similar position as me.
So when you say having a community, tell me what you mean, like, in terms of, are you interacting with people in the community? Is it just on our group calls, or what is the community done for you?
Yeah, the community
How does it help you?
is we've got the accountability teams, which are wonderful. My other teammates got COVID, so we're meeting this week, but it's really, when you get on the team calls and you hear not only the sales questions, those are great, those are huge, for your day-to-day operational things, where you can hear very similar sales scenarios to other professionals, in different walks of SaaS. But like, for me, the group calls give me just kind of a sense of, there's sometimes where I really want to participate, and sometimes where I just want to sit and listen to what other people are dealing with, and just sort of like absorb that. So so there's a give and take. Like, sometimes it's my turn to like, I need to ask this question because I have no freaking clue. Or, hey, I'm just going to listen to, so-and-so talk about, what they went, how they, got this deal closed, or what's changed about. I love to hear a good, a good story, a story with a good ending. So, and everybody in the community seems to be putting a lot of effort in, and really taking to heart. They're taking the program to heart. So that has been, almost like another momentum build. For me, it's knowing, and even within Salesforce, we've got our own Slack channel. I've met with Ryan, who knows you, and great guy, and just good quality people that are that you want to surround yourself with. And that's just kind of where you go, okay, I gotta get better. If I think this person is going to hang out with me, I need to be better
They
than I
say
am
that
now.
you are the product of the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
It's 100% true. Like I've heard so many leaders say that I said, you know what, it's got to be true.
Yeah.
And it is,
I
definitely is.
agree. I agree. And even you can say surround yourself with people you listen to, you get mentorship from,
Or
you
challenge you too. And
yeah, it doesn't
I
need to
think,
be your immediate family per se, but your
no,
social group is really what that refers to, right? Because
no,
your family,
absolutely.
your family's your family. So you talk about your why quite a bit, and
Mhm.
you're saying, well, my why revolved around my family. Can you kind of elaborate on like what was your why for like changing how you were, and how did that relate to your why and like showing up fully in all these areas of your life? Just talk to me about that piece, because you did it 9 times over. So what did you land on? Where's your why at now?
Yeah. I don't have my workbook up at the moment. Well, actually, I do. I might have it.
Just describe it. You don't have to, or you can write it down. You can read it.
Yeah. So, the short version of my why really is, here we go. So, a couple basic things. One, financial security for my family. I just, once you get that, there's a little bit of peace of mind. There's a lot of peace of mind that comes with that. And then was the biggest thing for me is I want to have experiences with my family. I want to be able to afford to do fun things. It's a nice car is awesome,
Yeah.
but vacations and
Yes.
for the my kids have been bugging me for, I was to say bugging me, it's not fair. For on my case for forever, we got a golf membership with a pool, a great pool where they've got food and stuff. And last year we didn't go one time, or we went one time.
What a
We
waste.
we went we went in the last month. We've gone, I think, 8 or 10 times.
It's amazing.
And as we used to go, okay, we're gonna go for like 90 minutes, and now it's I took them by myself, when my wife wasn't feeling well, and we were there for like 4 hours. I came home, I didn't put enough sunscreen on the kids. It was like, but we had the best time, and they were exhausted, and they were like, we want to do it again tomorrow. You got it. And that to me, even my 8-year-old was like, are you serious? This is awesome. Like, thank you, Dad. Like, geez, and to hear that from, you get these reinforced, these little things that, and having kids, when you get reinforcement for them, it's like, I'm going to do more of that. So, but I also have to balance being able to afford the country club membership, with the time. So again, it's, for me, those are the big things is, and again, why for me really is I've got a detailed explanation, but the fundamentals, are, want to take care of my family, want to be a good husband, want to, and I say want to be happy, but I want to be just consist. I want I want to be reliable. I want people to say, you know what, I know he's going to get it done, so I'm not even going to bother him in every walk of my life. That's kind of always been like something I love. Like, hey, you know what, tomorrow, can you get something done? Whatever it is, can you get that done? No problem. And that person knows 100% I'm going to get it done. I've always loved being around those types of people where you could just, and just, my wife is very much like that. My father is very much like that as well. And I just always kind of thought that's a nice descriptor for me to have, when, I know he's going to get it done. He's trustworthy. He's reliable. That's also what clients love when you talk to them on the phone. You do what you're going to say. You do the simple things. You follow up what you
It's
say you are.
integrity. It's having
Yeah,
integrity.
that's yes.
Keeping your word to yourself and to others.
And to that, and I'll make a quick point on that. When you showed me the integrity graph, and those visuals like that, you've done it a few times with me. It's are very eye-opening, because you kind of go, okay, what does this look like in my brain? And then you see, sort of this integrity gap, and you're like, yeah, I'm not even close, and I'm getting farther away as the days go by. So either something changes tomorrow, or it's just going to get worse. So I you can come on, everybody has a why, I think a lot of people just feel like they're, for me, I felt, like I was just struggling and there wasn't really a way out. So I just had to bear it. And I was waiting until something good happened. And that you typically is not the best way to live your life for me.
Well, you made something good happen. I mean, you took control.
Yeah.
And you continue to take control. So living with integrity,
Yeah.
providing for your family, and having experiences that
It's the experience. Yeah.
that one can dream about. I just came back from a vacation in Yosemite and Sequoia, and we got to stay inside of the national park in Yosemite, and it was absolutely a dream. I mean, it really was.
That's amazing.
We were in the park in this beautiful Airbnb, and I just, went on a hike, and I remember I kind of went off on my own, and I recorded the video. I just posted it on YouTube, and I basically said, this is my why. What what are we doing? And I'll show you. I can share my screen because it's right here. I can share it on Facebook. But we got to stay in this beautiful.
Whoa.
We got to stay in this beautiful cabin inside of Yosemite, which was, there's not many places to stay in Yosemite. It's basically all
Oh, that's awesome.
it was epic. I mean, there was in Sequoia, we were on a 6-acre lot inside of the park.
Oh man.
I think I have some pictures here from the cabin. I might have it from the night.
That's great. I did see one of those on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a few. I was carrying my kids quite a bit, but like
I love
to
it.
be
It's
able
great.
to be able to stay, and this was inside of the park, but to be able to stay in places, and we went on this night train and sang around a campfire, and just got to do just amazing things. That money was not an obstacle, not
Yeah.
from where we stayed, not from what we chose to do, not from where we ate, and it hasn't been for quite some time. And I think
Yeah.
that's important for people to understand is, when you have the bare basics, when you have enough to provide, you can get really comfortable and slip into, some pretty poor habits.
Yeah.
But when you start to get a taste of what life is like and what's possible, that inspires you to go and really give your all, so you can have incredible experiences that others can only dream about.
Absolutely. And I feel like, the sky's the limit at this point, which, 4, 6, 8 months ago wasn't, was, it wasn't even on my radar to even think
Your confidence
big.
your confidence has been the biggest change that I've seen. It's just like you got confidence from honoring your commitment to yourself, starting with the exercising, building upon these building blocks of
Yep.
habits, and then that kind of compounded into your family life, and then it compounded into your work life. So
Yeah.
the last bucket I want to just ask about is what's different of how you were working before, how you're showing up for work, and how you're working today, and what have been the results at work? Is it
Absolutely. Yeah. So today, so the biggest thing is, and you brought this up a number of times, is really focus, again, where's your time? So, we've talked about, there's prospecting and there's moving deals, across the line. Those are the urgent things. The internal meetings and stuff, while, they may be mandatory or something, but, if you don't have, be judicious, guard your time so that for me is a regular practice for me. In addition, I do, I prospect for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. It's not a chore for me anymore. The first week it was like, okay, now I know what type of prospecting I'm doing, who's going to go out to. So I know exactly who I'm reaching out to tomorrow, for example,
Yep.
in that 2-hour block. And sometimes it's not a 2-hour block. Sometimes it's, 1-on-1, but it's 2 hours a day. And it's not hard once so that's a big, for me. And I would say the biggest, at Salesforce, we've had a lot of growth in the past couple of years. We've had a lot of changes, a lot of shifts. I've had a couple managers. So, I think, so I had a new manager this fiscal year, and I think in the beginning it was kind of a caustic relationship that I made it, because it was like my third or fourth manager, and I was in a bad place. So, I kind of brought him down, and, it really took, so short story, short version is, we went from a kind of a mediocre, relationship to this, to one now where we are deliberately building on how best can each of us help each other get to these, breaking through quota and dominating, right? So it's sort of like now we both just want to kill it. And now we both, and from a results perspective, and this is, this for me is the most exciting. The next 3 months, I will make, as it stands right now, economic conditions, but as it stands right now, the next 3 months will be 3 of the largest commission checks that I've gotten at Salesforce. 2 of them the largest in my career. So, and we're, for me, it's life change. It's a life changing. From a money perspective, it's awesome. I can, put some money away for vacation, invest, pay off my, a car early or whatever it is, that we, but so the results, and quite, to be honest, if I look at my commission statement alone and go back to, I want to say roughly June, it's a trend line up. And then come September, it's going to be like almost like a good, and there's no, for me, having incorporated these habits, and now I've got sales, I've got work habits, I've got home habits, I've got work, exercise and self-care habits that are just there, and they happen because they're habitual now. So the results at work are, I actually, for a while was looking for a new job, and then decided, no, you and I had a long conversation about that alone. And it was like, no, I am walking away from something that's just, I thought was too challenging. When I turned it into, it's going to be a fun challenge, sort of this whole different shift. And I faked it at first, I was like, no, I'm going to battle through this, and I'm going to, and I made a commitment to myself that the only way I would even consider leaving Salesforce was a massive amount of money and the same level of freedom. But that hasn't happened yet, and I'm still very pleased. And but the actual quota results. So at the end of October, I will have one or two, depending, of my quota buckets eliminated. So my multi-year quota will be gone by the end of Q3. So really excited about that. And I feel like I feel like there's more behind it. I know there's more behind it. So it's like, this whole boulder, and I had I'm having, so the big thing, and I'll kind of know we've got almost a time here, but the big thing for me is it's awesome, but if it was half that amount or a third of that amount, I still feel like I'd be like, pretty okay. I'm putting in the work. Eventually these things are going to, so I'm not, and as I say that all to say, I'm not attached to that result. I'm just really happy with it.
Yeah.
But didn't make me happy, so,
I love it, man.
but I always was before. I always was. And I just love the feeling of not being so,
what's happening, and there's a good place to wrap up, is you're focused, you're falling in love with the process. You're falling in love with the process of working on yourself, of taking care of yourself, of providing for your family, and freaking showing up at work and actually focusing on RGAs, revenue generating activities, and saying no to distractions or no to non-critical events. You're literally implementing everything we are talking about, and that is having a profound impact on your relationships, on your confidence, on your self-image, and your belief. And that's then
undoubtedly
translating to your work and how you're engaging with clients, and probably how your deals are progressing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. My boss has maybe mentioned things, that things have gotten so much more organized, things are moving at a better velocity. It's, so getting that type of feedback was really great too. because, just you're seeing, you're getting more positive reinforcement. from
I'm
it.
proud of you, brother. I have one last question to ask is what would
Of
you
course.
say to people who feel stuck, who feel like they're not challenging themselves, they're in their comfort zone, they're unhappy with how they are, they're unhappy with living a meh life. I'm going to call it a meh life as
Yeah,
we're living
that's
before
exactly what it
now.
is.
And now you're living this like extraordinary life and you're just getting started. What would you say to people who feel, who feel stuck? Like what can they
Sure.
do to have some similar type of transformation?
Yeah. So number one, I would say, if you're in the program and you're stuck, commit more to the program. You're not totally committed. Do the things and have some patience. That I was very fortunate enough that I say fortunate enough where I was at a low enough point where any upward mobility was going to be good.
Mhm.
And then it just kept going. Once I got back to where I was like, okay, this is good, it kept going. And that was awesome. So, but identify, be aware, like I think it's okay to say, hey, I feel stuck. Like say to somebody, say it in the mirrors, but you got to acknowledge it. It's, for me, it goes back to sort of my AA days of, all the 11 steps are great, but if you don't say if I don't say I'm an alcoholic, they don't matter.
Yeah, for sure.
So that for me is really transformational, is like just being able to say, okay, either it's my wife, hey honey, I'm stuck, or hey Ian, I'm stuck, can you help me? And for those that are not in the program, those seek it out, because I haven't met anybody yet that's, either been involved with yourself or, somebody, in a similar field that has not said it was worth its weight in gold. And it's, that is, that for me, that's I can say that with 100% confidence that, once you acknowledge that there's a problem, there are amazing resources out there that have been through it. I know you've been, I think that's the other appeal of your program is, when we talk about the hard stuff, you've been through it all. You're every part of your life was not easy. So to say the least, right? So I think that's also a huge comfort for myself and a lot of us, is like, hey, this guy he didn't walk up to the top. This was a grind. And so like, shut up and listen to him, because it's not your turn to talk. You don't know what you're talking about type thing. Like go get, so yeah, it's, get some help. You will never get unstuck alone, in my opinion. I'm sure there's people that would disagree with me, but yeah, I get some level of help, and then do the work once you know what you have to do. Listen to the experts, and honestly, go into this program. This is something, when the next one shows up, I'm going to be the first one on LinkedIn posting everybody that wants to get in and get into this thing, because it's invaluable. Some people might say it's expensive. Some people might say for me, it's pennies on the dollar, not literally pennies on the dollar, but it is, when I look at the return that I've gotten, unquestionable. It's the best investment I've made since getting married.
Mhm. I'm glad I'm a close second.
Yeah. No,
I want to just recognize you. I mean, I've been coaching a long time, and you have done everything to a T, from watching the videos to doing the workbook to engaging with your cohort to applying everything that I asked you to do on our calls. So again, you deserve all the credit. And ultimately, I'd say for anyone listening, Matt's an example of change your habits, change your life, right? Get success habits adopted and build momentum, and then watch it translate
unquestionable. Yeah.
every other part of your life. There's a cool quote from Aristotle that I want to share, and it's his quote on excellence. And he says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit."
I love it. I love that quote. It's one of my favorites, because once that is a huge transformational shift in your brain that you have to make. And it's hard to even fathom excellence as a habit, but it is. You have to do. It's that whole, how you do anything is how you do everything. I say that to myself 100 times a day. Hey, like, even washing, do a good job washing the dishes, do a good job vacuuming, do a good job, like those things, be excellent at each little thing. And it's like fucking the
And
world's your oyster.
repeatedly do things that are
Yeah.
gonna make you successful. Repeatedly spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Repeatedly work on your health. Repeatedly prospect. Repeatedly journal. Repeatedly
Yeah.
meditate. Repeatedly, take time for your family. Play golf. Whatever is going to fill your cup. Right.
Yeah.
It is really that simple.
It is, and the results are speak for themselves. In my, I just the happiness and success in the job, and better relationships with my kids and more connectedness is just awesome. And I feel like it's I'm not even 100% there yet.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing a little bit
Yeah,
about
anytime.
keep it up. It's only going to get better and better and bigger and better, and it starts literally with changing how you spend the time in your day, those 24 hours, valuing your time and choosing your time wisely in the areas that are going to provide the biggest returns. So
Undoubtedly.
I'm super happy for you. And like I said, I wanted to capture your experience to inspire other people. I'm going to put this on YouTube and share with people what they can do to improve and better their life, whether they join the program or not. That doesn't matter to me. What matters most is people taking control over their destiny. That's
just it. I know that you mean that when you say, whether you join it's because you're and that's the thing, for anybody that's going to listen to this, Ian is an example of somebody that's doing this out of sincerity and love for the to him, the success is the result. And that's observationally speaking, that's what I see. So yeah, it's been so much better, and I feel like again, it's really there's no limits.
There's no limits, brother. There's
So,
the way you're operating right now is going to create the life of your dreams. It already is, and you're already experiencing it. But the outcomes that are going to come and the results that are going to come are going to be bigger and better than you ever could have dreamed possible 5 months ago. So I
can't wait.
I'm very keep it up, keep it up, and stay the course and keep those excellence habits, as Aristotle is going. You are what you repeatedly do. So do things that make an impact for your life and for the lives of others, and you can't go wrong. So with that, brother, I got to go to my kindergarten to go meet the teacher. School's back tomorrow, so I got to go practice what I preach. But thank you so much for your time tonight, and I'm excited to see what's for you. So thanks, Matt. Have a good one.
Ian.
Take care, buddy.